Number 2 is prayer. Jonathan Melody, do you mind?
Blessings that you bring to Decatur ISD. I thank you for the wisdom and guidance that's here in this room tonight. I pray, Lord, that you will lead us toward making the best decisions for our students first, leading them for us in our minds and all our decisions. I pray, Lord, that you will be with us turning this week and give them comfort and your arms around them. I ask all these things.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item 2, public forum. Nobody signed up. Item 3, budget workshop. Dr. Jones.
Okay, Dylan had asked for some recommendations. We had gone over some things with you guys here a few months ago, just talking about some specific cuts we could make to the 24-25 budget. So in front of you is a list of those recommendations totaling a little over $1.8 million for the 24-25 budget. Obviously, there are still some things that have to be considered as we move forward, some things we've got to continue to look at. You know, not figured in here are any grant positions, and down below in the asterisk you can see, for example, the plan would be when grant positions come up, not just roll those into a regular full-time position, look to replace those employees, obviously through attrition into a spot that's not grant funded, but not just continually when we do get grants and have to hire employees, continually just add to our staff. That's continuing to build on to the deficit that we're building. And obviously my recommendation for the board is just to continue to kind of to look through the spring and into the early summer as far as the thoughts on staff raises for 24-25. You know, right now I would say that that's going to be very difficult if we're going to cut into the budget at all. But at the same time, obviously I think every board member up here, plus me, we all want to make sure we do everything we can for our staff. So I think that's something we continually look at as we move forward. One couple of things that one thing I did want to mention, something we did not put on here is changing the class size ratio at MMS, because MMS is an older building and the classes that are not up to TEA regulations, we don't know that we can fit more kids in those classrooms, period. So anyway, you see the list there. There are all some things we've talked about and gone over in the past, and obviously not things we look forward to doing or want to do, but are things that we feel like can be done to cut into the deficit.
Also, we are videoing YouTube.
We're testing it, yes.
Okay, we're testing on YouTube, so if you have questions, please speak into the mic. That way we can see if it's going to work or not. So I have a question, I have multiple questions, but on number 1, what is the ratio now? What's it going to? And how do we come up with 650,000?
Y'all let Cindy talk about the class size ratios and can you speak into the mic? The red.
Okay. It's 30-1. And so with that and the formula that was in the sheets that you had before, that would be 10 teachers. That we would reduce by going. That also includes, by going 30-1, that includes the elimination of the PLC period.
And that's just at an average, like these numbers are rounded, so that's just averaging, saying $65,000 a teacher.
So what does TEA recommend for class size for high school? What ratio?
There is no ratio once you get past.
What are we currently?
Currently, last year's staffing was based on 25. But I think the ratio is actually lower than that. If you look back at that's what the staffing is based on.
And cutting the PLC period, so we just add those back. So what's the consequences? How's that going to affect us by cutting those? Obviously, it's money savings, but how does that affect teaching and learning?
Well, that,
I guess I'm asking, we just implemented them back, I believe. I don't think Miles not here, is he? We just implemented them back for a reason, and I don't want to answer for him, but what was that reason? Why did we implement them back?
Well, basically, I think morale. I mean, the bottom line is, he kind of went to teachers 2 years ago, and, this is, to me, PLCs is more of a campus scheduling issue. And so what he did, he went to teachers and said, would you rather have larger numbers and have the PLC period, or smaller numbers and just have your one planning period? And at that time, they said, we want to keep our PLCs. So they kept them and they did away with them except in math and ELA, is that right? Or anyway, they did away with them, but then they wound up having more kids. That was the year we kind of exploded in growth. So they wound up having as many kids as they would have anyway. So they wanted to go back to having PLCs. What I can say is it's a great thing. When I got here and saw PLCs, I'm like, wow, I can't believe we're able to do that for our staff, but also know how rare this is around the state. This is the first district I've been in 33 years that has these. And so while it is a great benefit and something that's good, when we get to this point and we're at 3 months operating in our fund balance, we've got to start looking at what cuts can we make. And unfortunately, if you can't give raises, that hurts morale. If you have to cut PLCs or things they want, that hurts morale. Unfortunately, we're at that point where we have to start making some tough decisions. So I think the reason he went back to us because they said, well, we had as many students anyway, we'd just soon have our PLC period. So we made that decision for this year.
Just to be clear though, they still have conference, because that's required. So they have conference, and then they also have a PLC.
yes,
And then they also have a lunch.
yes.
That's correct.
You may not talk to it. Go ahead.
But, and is that high school and middle school? I believe so.
Middle school just has it in 2 areas, right?
Not all areas.
The reading apps are both middle and high school, the PLC.
Yeah.
Initially, it started where I but some of that.
So they're teaching six blocks, right? And then
They teach six of 8 periods.
okay, and then a conference and a PLC. And then they also have the lunch building.
What is the length of a high school? What is their start and end? When do they start? 8?
What time is there? No, what time is there?
8 to 3:50. 8 to 3:50, and kids leave at 3:50. Is that correct? Kids leave at 3:50.
So there was quality of life benefits from doing this. We're going to put more burden on the student to teacher ratio, because obviously that's more, I'm assuming the teacher has a lot more work. But this would be one of the pros, at this point, is out on the list of a 4-day week, because this would be built in PLC days. And we don't have 2 weeks, still get cost savings. And we get to save those quality of life concerns, just noting that. Because I don't see the 40 weeks not on this recommendation. I didn't see that. I think that's important to note.
I missed last meeting when that was brought up, I was sick. And so I'm just gonna share this right now about 4-day week. I'm really concerned about doing a 4-day week, just because right now, I mean, we have so much academic learning to get to our students, because we're not where we need to be as a district right now, all of our campuses. I don't see how 4-day week is gonna work right now for our students. That's my only.
Cindy, do do we know, so we're talking about if we do this go from, roughly 25 to 1 to 30 to 1, it eliminates approximately 10 positions, is that correct? What's at the high school level, do we know kind of historically what's the turnover there? I know it goes up and down, but just the rough. Does anybody know that off the top of their head? I mean, I've seen it district-wide, I just haven't seen it at the high school specifically.
You're good, don't worry
Right now, because I had looked at it, I want to say there's like 15
Position.
to 20 probationary positions. So that would mean that they've been within 1 to 2 years of being hired. It may even be at this house, this 20, that didn't count for dual contract probationary.
That's fine, thank you.
So,
Can we get those numbers?
we brought it up a couple of times, but if we could get that broken down in elementary, middle school, and then high school.
Just the probationary teachers, teachers, and then also teacher turnover on average. Like, let's say last 6 to 8 years.
Would you also add to that, I'm sorry. Would you also add to that, if you think there should be some that are going out through attrition, they have their tenure, they're retiring, you do that by, I know that's a guesstimate, but you can put that on there as well.
You mean that, well, actually, at the next board meeting, it'll be on the agenda to do the resignation incentive, that we try to get them in early. But I can ask the principals if any teachers have come to them and said, hey, I'm probably going to retire at the end of the year. A lot of them wait, probably to turn in that letter until you approve the resignation. And retirement incentive, if y'all approve it in this budget, the next meeting.
And don't quote me, but I think Mr. Lackey, when he talked about his turnover rate since he's been here, it was at like 50%, 30%, and then down to like 17% at the hospital. I know PLCs had something to do with a little bit of that, but that's, since he had been here, the rate had changed that much.
Well, and also you had a coaching, a coaching athletic director change, and so that always, the year that you have that, increases because, some coaches, they follow that.
So would this be cutting any of the PLC periods in the middle school? Or did you say we don't have those?
Well, that's the one thing that we've got to look at, because I actually, I don't think we can change the student-teacher ratio because of the size of the classrooms, but we could look at cutting PLCs, which I would do think through attrition, so say you wouldn't have to hire as many teachers back, so I think that would be something we could look at to add to this, of cutting PLCs there.
So one of the things that when we were doing the salary study, we were concerned about competition and retention and turnover. And the fact how turnover has a huge effect on teaching learning. And if we are setting them up or setting ourselves up for an opportunity to run folks off because they can go somewhere else, make more money, and have a better quality of life, I mean, it has to be weighed. And we're so concerned about accountability on teaching and learning, this is going to have a consequence. Raising the kids to raise student-to-teacher ratio and taking away PLCs. And again, there are other solutions, so we've got to make sure we're weighing that. We can't ignore one other solution when it solves both these problems. It's solved by the other solution.
And the other solution is what?
I was gonna say,
It's a 4-day week.
I think you heard from our principals last time, especially at the elementary level, that was not a very popular solution.
How does the 4-day, I'm asking, how does the 4-day help with, they'll still be eliminating their PLC? So that 5th day, they would?
4-day work. At home, yeah, but 4 days. That's the thing that we're all that,
Do you mind coming up to the mic, just for that?
So, at the DIC meeting, I gave them the information that you guys received at the last board meeting when you guys were discussing this. One of the main questions that came up was academic, like, what does that look like? Some of it still, 4-day work weeks haven't been, more than 3+ years in a lot of cases. Some were not, some were longer. And so some of the people in DIC looked at those districts and got more information. I did not bring that because I wasn't sure how this meeting was gonna go, because I didn't have the agenda. But I can give you guys that as far as some of the academics and some of the things that went with it. Now, I'm speaking in moment, you can chime in. A lot of that was with other districts that are going on, like Chico and things like that. This goes back to morale and goes back to the competition and leading teachers to districts that have 4-day work weeks. So that's the kinds of things that we're talking about. Obviously, that's going to take time no matter what we do, and we're going to have to look at that. But those are some of the things that came up. So back to your PLC question, is during that 4-day work week, it would range depending on the district, but there would be a PLC day that was built in. So one of those Fridays or Mondays that were off, would be PLC day. And then the teachers had that whole day to work on things they would have done. Maybe, let's be realistic, it might be 45 minutes, but really it's about 30 minutes, and then it's a collective. So when PLCs were, they didn't have PLCs during their work week, that PLC became that day.
Their proposed day off.
That one of the, yeah, so they didn't have 4 Fridays off a month. They had 3 Fridays off a month, and 1 month was strictly PLC.
I think it's a misnomer. It's a 4-day school week, but there still would be some teacher service days on those days. When do we get the results of that survey?
For,
It's still open.
30 days?
No, we're going 60 days, right, Robin? Because you recommended that that's what any kind of getting data, you only go for 60 days.
So, I mean,
So what, well, where are we at now with that? I mean, there's enough data at this point. Where are we?
There's been over 4,000 responses.
So where are we roughly? Can we get the results?
about,
It would depend on if you wanted to wait the 60 days you had decided when you asked for it, if you want to change that time period.
Well, it seems like we're making this kind of a crunch here. And if this is some data that we need to have, I think we need to look at all of that.
I think that there's a couple of things going on here. First of all, schools are for children. So they're the number one concern we have. It's not only staff morale, it's for our kids' learning. That's what we're here for, kids first. Secondly, you have to get creative. You know, I'm not for sure what the schedule is at the high school anymore, but I know at the elementaries, they come in at 7:30 and their day ends at about 4. So you can begin that PLC at 7:30 in the morning, and at their first conference, and then they have an extra 30 minutes added to their conference. Or we could possibly, you know, every Friday, get out of school at 2:20. And then you have from 2:20 to this time to 4 o'clock, and then another PLC. We have to get very creative. I understand the benefits of a PLC. They're very positive when done correctly. I totally get it. And they benefit our students is the number one reason we have a PLC, is to benefit our students' learning, not the staff morale. Our teachers that went into teaching because they love teaching, they're not gonna leave if their PLC is on. They're not gonna leave. They love what they do. That's not gonna bring them to here to stay or not. So I don't think that's a fair thing to say, if we don't have a PLC, we're gonna lose a lot of people. The morale's gonna go down. Well, you know what, it stinks. Money is what we all need, and the morale's gonna go down because we're in a tight budget. That it's just what it is. But I've seen there are many creative calendars and schedules where you could get your PLCs in there without taking and making it a 4-day week. And I think we need to look at all those options before we even consider a 4-day week.
going back to what you were saying, basically that plan gives them 1 PLC day a month. The plan we're in now gives them a PLC day every day of the week, every day we have school. So say you got 20 days of the school month, 20 days instead of 1. Where, like what most places I've been, you work out a PLC where you do it once every week or once every couple of weeks, and you work out the schedule, do something creative like that. So I don't know that 1 a month is going to benefit morale that much more than just getting creative and figuring it out with what we're doing now. I think there's some other benefits that if the survey turns out where it's like people are for it, the board chooses to go with a 4-day week. But I don't know that it's because we can have 1 PLC a month is the winning argument for it.
When I taught at the high school at Northwest, we did 2 PLCs a week. We took our conference and we met with our team on Mondays and Thursdays or how that worked out, and that was plenty, because we had the grading to do, and sometimes we didn't take the entire period to meet with PLC. We didn't have a lot to catch up on, but I do see the benefits of the 4 days. You know, I don't know where I'm at on that, but I do think that PLC every day will be unpopular in opinion with teachers, but I don't necessarily think that, I think that could be too much. But I don't know, I need to hear more.
I just think when we raise the class sizes, particularly PLCs, and we pretty much tell you you're not gonna get a longevity check, and there's a really good chance you're not gonna get a raise. What is all those gonna do to teacher retention is my concern. And on this list is a very unpopular topic that's not on this list is dissolving the STEM to all the campuses. I would like to know what's the reasons for not really looking at that? Because, I mean, obviously we're at a $2.7 million deficit right now. And this would take off, pretty much almost cut that in half. It's 1.8. And then a 3% raise is how much? 1 million. Yes, Robin?
Just microphone.
Oh, Cindy? So if we just did these cuts, there's no way to do a raise. If I look at the numbers and we cut everything, it would get us at a balanced budget, and we would still go in a deficit to give raises, but we would have the ability to give a raise.
I think you would be close, yes. I don't know what numbers are on the sheet in front of me.
I think the reason that you don't cut STEM is because of what Melanie said, is the kids, the students, we're here for the students, and that school serves a community of students that, you know, needs that different type of learning.
I agree. I didn't say cut it. I said dissolve it to each campus, like Melanie spoke about a couple months ago. Put the STEM at every location, elementary, because we have a teacher and we have classrooms, and we actually have the ability to expand the STEM program in each campus because we have room to. Versus, unfortunately, the STEM program now is extremely popular and we're maxed out there. Which, if we had more room, we could have more kids, which would then raise up our income if transfers were coming. Because if I'm mistaken, we had 100 transfers or something that we had to turn down. So
We can also put STEM at a different campus,
But that's what we're
still not
saying,
in STEM.
if she's had to turn down 100 transfers, 72 transfers, I don't know how many transfers do you have right now? 70? About, you know?
It's 18%.
That's what I'm saying, turn around and make a fundraiser for us, almost 18 for a fundraiser, but if we were to put it a wing at each campus, that would maybe give more space for more students of the STEM, and we could bring in, I'm not saying necessarily close the STEM, but I'm saying if that's a target, that's bringing in revenue, bringing in students for that program, because our bilingual program is not, it's losing them. So we're gonna slash that, looks like. And if we're doing good at the STEM, then why can't we begin to replicate that? Okay, let's put a wing at one of the other elementaries and do a wing of STEM over there. With those campuses, the way they're built, well, I think they all are probably, you've got a wing you can make a non-traditional school, and you can still have your traditional schools. I mean, that's a need for the district, and more kids are turning down. I mean, let's maybe keep that STEM and open another wing over in one of the elementaries and have a STEM wing there, and then next year put it in another elementary, have a STEM wing there. I mean, it's a popular program, and it's helping the district. I don't know, I'm just saying, if we've got space in those buildings, let's fill those buildings with student bodies. And maybe if we replicate the program and begin to go to each other.
Cause that's, that would, I mean, cause the money savings is dissolving it and then making it a sixth grade campus. But if you pick up all those transfers, you pick up $680,000. I'm sure you probably have to add staff. With, I don't know, but
Well,
I mean, 72 students, whatever it was. But you probably,
What type of costs would we incur if we put, did whatever renovations or, I don't know, turn those classrooms into STEM, what they've done over at the STEM school? How expensive would that be to do it at every school?
There's a lot. The bathrooms, the rooms are smaller, the square footage of the rooms is smaller. You're not gonna get 30 kiddos in those small rooms, it won't fit. It was built at a different time. That building was different. And so you tell me you put in big boys in there and it's not good.
Well, and
It's just a big cost.
when you walk into STEM, it is STEM from the time you walk in the building till you walk out of that building. Every piece of that school is STEM based, from the Lego walls to the innovation lab to the engineering. It's all STEM. So are you gonna do that to every wing at each elementary?
I'm just saying, we've got to think out of the box.
I agree, we could switch campuses.
There might be an option, maybe if you grow it, we have, and I don't know what the numbers are, all the elementary don't have units stuff in front of me, and this is not a popular thing, I can say it right now, but if you've got, I don't know, 100 kids shy on one of the campuses, we look at rearranging them, and we end up maybe making, one of the elementaries kind of, again, the kids that don't want to be at the STEM, we shuffle them to the other more traditional elementaries, and we have two STEM elementaries. If we begin to move the students around. I know that's just way out there, but I'm just saying.
Stephanie,
We have to think differently, and if you've got something that's really good,
Stephanie, what are your thoughts on how do you, because you know, I used to tease you quite a bit about STEM district-wide. And the word was can't, I believe, or not, I don't know what you're saying. I said, what do you mean? Yeah. Okay.
It's just a big, I just did a fly there, so that's there. So
The drawing card, it's like you're saying, it's not a drawing card, you have one kid.
as far as I think, my state, looking around and getting it's the one that's not completely packaged yet. I'm not sure this is copyrighted. But I think it's such a vast thing for kids that I have. And so I was thinking that if I teach her math class every year, if we flip off those two campuses, where you just change their address, so the young elementary kiddos would go to where it's my building. And then my building went to young elementary.
Can you use a mic?
Sorry.
and I'm gonna throw out there on that, I'm only looking at this as cost savings. I don't like the idea of it. I know kids love it. Last thing I'm trying to do, I'm looking at cost savings. What would it cost to, it costs us how much, $3 million to create that STEM? Yeah, I mean, you're gonna be starting from scratch at young. So there goes the whole, like,
Well, that was the remodel. So we didn't spend $3 million on STEM stuff on my campus. I mean, like my innovation lab has some awesome things in it, but I don't know how much that would cost to put in it. But that classroom, that's what it would cost or that would be the cost at Young, would be that innovation lab. And other than that, we've STEM certified all my teachers. We have STEM curriculum that they use in the classrooms. We have STEM tugs and STEM curriculum that my teachers use.
I'm just trying to lay all the options. Like that way everybody knows we're supporting everything and what fits and doesn't, and you know why you don't get a raise or a PLC or your campus dissolves, whatever it comes to.
Because like what she said earlier, as far as like all of those transfer kids, if I had a bigger space and I could accept all of those transfer kids, it seems like that would be a really big money making thing if I were able to accept all those transfer kids. I just
When you go back and look at the STEM, when we did that proposal on the STEM closure, all that money was not just STEM closure. It was also admin. There was money in admin from reducing staff with attrition. And then there was, I believe it was the PLCs at the middle school. There were some other things. It wasn't just shutting it down. So there's not going to be, your cost savings isn't going to be there when we add in remodeling, which is, just for instance, the bathrooms, those toilets are going to be raised. There's a lot of stuff that's going to change there.
That was $8,000 to change the tools out. From
It's pretty big price.
I'm just giving you numbers that I know.
Yeah, that's
It's not
good.
30,000. It's
Yeah, but I'm surprised because you have to, walls and those funds. That's good. But there's still a lot there that you're going to have to raise for 6th, 7th, 8th grade, whatever we're going to put in. There's a lot of things that have to change. And again, you have to do some real vetting on the square footage of those classrooms and how many kiddos you're going to get in there and how many teachers you can do for the classroom. Because you're not going to get the same number of kids in there that you tear down walls. There's something to think about. It's not as simple as just a plug and play.
And I don't look at this as a long-term solution. I mean, obviously, if we could somehow pass a bond, and then we can go right back to where we're at. It's a short-term. I would hope that it was short-term.
Well, I'm all about the whole district being STEM. I said it to the board when it first got on, and I've teased Stephanie forever. So I'm not anti that. I'm just also pointing out some of the obvious things that are happening here. When you do get these extra 100 kiddos show up, then pretty soon they're going to be in middle school. We're right back to that crunch. So when you think about that as well, I mean, it's a necessary evil, I guess, that if we get them in, we need to be find some trailers. And
Well,
so-
the first set of 5th graders is moving on to 6th grade next year. So,
Because it's just not as clean cut as it can seem.
Well, let me just jump in here, and the reason I didn't include this on this sheet is because two things. Number one, I've been consistent with my statement all along is, and that the only time I would recommend closing STEM was when we got to the point where I saw that, hey, we're not going to make payroll, or we're going to be bankrupt as a district. Or right now, what we've gotten to is just slightly below 3 months operating. The state says we should be at 3 months operating. So we're not in dire straits today, but the direction we're heading, if we continue to pass deficit budgets, would get us in dire straits. So the goal is be forward thinking, look at some of these things that we can cut. If we can cut 1.8 million from the budget next year, or from the deficit next year, that's a huge step in the right direction. Obviously, eventually, we all think we're going to get funded eventually, but we don't know when that's going to be. So we have to take some steps. I'm not saying that it would never be an option for the district to close STEM, because it may have to be at some time. I think the problem, though, is number one is I agree with what Scott was saying. Is it's a logistically to go in and change that building to fit 6th graders is going to take time. The logistics of personnel and where they're going to move and how you're divvying up staff, and it is a process, especially when you're in a time of transition looking for a superintendent. So there's a lot of moving pieces, a lot of balls in the air right now that's happening in the district. And I think the thing is, these things can happen without making some huge change or, being overreactive. And then if that needs to happen, obviously, I think it would need a full year. So I think at budget time in August, when the board approves a budget, that would be the time to say, let's look at 25, 26. Are we going to have to make some changes, do something different, look at other options for the STEM campus in 25, 26, because we may know more in August. That's why I didn't include it in here now, because I don't think it's something that has to happen now. Obviously, it's up to the board, but that's just my input on why I didn't include that now.
I would still, I understand the negatives on the 4-day week, but we haven't seen a real deep input or thought process into the cost savings. From transportation to HVAC, all the overhead items that would not be used 1 day a week, they add up, and all that should be looked at, and that should be added to this. If we have some goodwill by creating some quality of life concerns or improvements, and then we have some cost savings, it should be looked at. And I understand the negatives. I really do. I get them. I also understand that the surveys from all those schools on average were 95% year 2 that the community was happy with what they did. So I think it's worth investing some time in and looking at being a little bit of visionary, looking a little bit different, and realizing that it's not just school districts. A lot of employers are going to this kind of concept. And I think we're out twice this week, 2 days this week, right? Or this month. We're out 2 days this month. On average, I think that we're out 2 days a week Yeah, 2 4 days. Or a month, 2 4 days.
And I definitely think that's something we look into, but from what I was told is it takes about a year for scheduling to be able to implement a 4-day work week. Every campus that I know has done it.
It's just that right now, we were off last week, and we'll be off, next week? Or 4 day week? It's just a calendar. We approve a calendar every year. So this calendar is gonna be 1 day off per week. It's not that big of a deal. But that comes with some major cost savings. I don't, did you guys need to look at how many days off they currently have? How many 40 weeks we have?
So I apologize. No, it's okay. It was about 40% of the calendar had 4-day work weeks. Do not quote me on this, because it's not right in front of me. I'd like to get back to that, but it was about 40% had like a 4-day work week within the whole calendar, is my understanding. The new calendar that DIC is looking at right now, one of them is looking to move towards close to 50% 4-day work week.
So we're slowly getting there. We're just not gonna call it a 4-day week, but we're gonna get the
It's,
results of it.
it's moving in that direction, and that's community and teachers alike that work on that.
Right.
So, like I said, that's gonna be voted on and so forth, and that's what we're working on. We're working on like a normal calendar for this upcoming school year, but there was a lot of loose ends when it came to 4-day work week, so they started doing research, and teachers, when they're looking at that, the dogs were alone, so they were all over it. So I do have some of the academic data that they presented at the DIC that I can print off. It's not, I think I missed the time to like the agenda, but I can give it to you guys on Monday.
Can you just give us a summary? I know you have a lot of this in your head.
I do have a lot in my head. I can't cite the specific school districts. There's no way for me to do that. There were some of the districts, and Kim's still here. She might even have it in her, but there were some of the school districts that definitely saw some improvement in their scores. There were some of the school districts that did not see improvement, went down. I don't remember any significant improvement up too much or down too much. Most, it was kind of a draw. And this is what some of the superintendents that they did get a hold of would say, or did say, is that they didn't necessarily contribute, even if there was an increase in the grades or a decrease in the grades, necessarily to the 4-day work week. They still felt very indifferent to the fact that they were still recovering from just some of the COVID stuff and so forth, so they did not feel comfortable saying A equals B. And that was it was pretty universal. So right now, what I would say is you have some cost savings with some of the information that you guys saw. And then I would say for academics, I would go right down the middle with it, with obviously peaks that did see an increase, but you also saw some that did see a decrease. And I'll have that and I can pull it for you. I'm sorry, I didn't realize.
No, that's fine. Are we comparing those schools to the demographic and the low social and economic that we are?
I pulled a little bit of everything, but just, that list that was on your board book, we kind of started from there. And honestly, I was going more towards, do we have 2 or more years to like really look at something as opposed to just a year, just to get a little bit more of a handle on it. So that's what we looked at. I can go back and try and like maybe star or something like that. The ones that are a little bit more comparable.
Yeah, we just need to see apples and apples. I don't want to see China Springs and that they're completely demographic than we are.
So I can star some of the ones that are more compatible.
I spoke with Dr. Stewart in Gainesville, and their low socioeconomic numbers are a lot higher than ours. And, kind of a common thread I hear in superintendents I've talked to that are in 4-day school weeks is it's not earth-shattering in the savings, but there are some savings. What's earth-shattering is the morale boost. What's earth-shattering is the teacher, well, it's not only teacher, but student attendance and teacher attendance. Those are the biggest benefits that they've seen. Retaining teachers, using it as a draw to hire teachers, obviously those are the biggest strengths. But none of the people I've talked to have done it long enough to really know the academic effects That's kind of been the,
Yeah.
the gist.
And
of it.
I lean more towards just trying to find some 2 or more years to get a little bit of trend.
You talked to the Falcons,
Um,
maybe the other size, maybe.
I,
They were the first ones.
Yeah, I didn't talk directly to Athens. When I was talking to, they kind of told me some of their stuff, and then he's done a lot of articles and newspaper art, and so I pulled some of the stuff in there, but I didn't directly talk to him. We did pull some of the stuff.
So when you're talking about the 40%, 50% of 4-day weeks, if we're going to 50, what does that look like if we shorten down Thanksgiving, or is this what you're already doing, shorten down the Thanksgiving week to just 3 days off and maybe looking at Christmas? How are you coming up with the extra days there?
No, Christmas breaks a little bit there just because of how it falls. I don't have that in front of me. Thanksgiving was still the same. They're coming back about the same time, which is part of it. One of the things we're talking about, which just to make notes for everybody that's paying attention to this, these are draft things. This is nothing set. I just want to be clear. One of the things we were also looking at is when you start looking at calendar, you start looking at instructional minutes. Middle school and high school typically have more instructional minutes than elementary. Well, that tends to put you in a bit of a pickle because if you have a snow day, and you decide to close school, it puts elementary at a place where we're going to have to make it up, but not necessarily middle and high school. Well, then you can't sit there and call school and go, okay, everybody's going to school if you're elementary, but not middle and high. You know what I mean? Like that's just it's a scheduling nightmare. And so looking at adding like 5 minutes in the morning and 5 minutes in the end, and kind of sideswiping that so that buses, and like I said, I have not talked, there's so many steps to this, talking to Virginia and talking like, is even possible? These were just the discussions that happened.
Just to give you a quick example of that, just in our situation now, STEM has between 2.5 and 3 more days of minutes just by going 5 extra minutes a day. So a lot of people, in regards to your question, Jeremy, what they do is they lengthen days by just a little bit. You can lengthen a day 10 or 15 minutes, and that's going to make a huge difference in your overall minutes for the year. Therefore, you don't have to cut a lot of days out of current breaks and that kind of.
So there's a lot of moving pieces to that, but that's some of the discussions that we had. Regardless of what day of week we were going, trying to balance out middle, secondary and elementary a little bit better was also a priority. Just to get that a little so we're better equipped.
Well, and I think piggybacking off, I think it's important for especially the community to know that it's based in number of minutes per year, not how many days. In the same number of minutes, you're getting the same quantity of education. It's just configured differently.
Yeah, we have to, and then there's other things we have to meet too. Not only the minutes, we have to meet CTE requirements there's a lot of things that go into how that would go. So it's not instructionally, if we went 4-day, we are still responsible for meeting all of the requirements of the state. So all of that still has to happen. 4-day, 5-day, 7-day, doesn't matter. We have to make sure.
And these are all things too that right now, Meredith and Cindy and they're getting the paperwork ready to start meeting with principals to talk staffing for 24-25 budget. So that's why it's important to kind of lay the groundwork, because all these things would be included in the 24-25 budget that the board doesn't approve till August, but knowing these things allows you to plug things in or take things out as we move along right now.
When do we usually put the survey for the calendar out?
So, ESD 2 is February.
Typically February.
I'm sorry, I said that.
Okay, on the 10% reduction of budgets, what is that going to consist of? Because there's going to be significant.
I'll let Cindy touch on this.
That was 10% of every line item that wasn't software, wasn't the service center contract, because we have the service center contract, the appraisal district contract, the contract with the tax collector, all those type contracts that we have to have in order to operate as a school. Those were not included in the 10%. I did not include fuel in the 10% either this time because the fuel pool renews in April. And so I don't know if you're going to be able to reduce that by 10%. Depends on what happens between now and April. So it's everything, all supplies, all contracted services, everything like that, except the what? All travel.
Travel.
Except for student travel in function 36. Because I don't know realignment yet. Realignment happens in February, so if we get realigned, we're having to travel further, then you're gonna have to take the bus on us to the game. So that's what that includes. It includes utilities, everything in maintenance, everything, custodial supplies, all campus budgets, it's all budgets.
How do we do that on utilities? What are you gonna turn the air up?
Yes. We will.
In our already hot buildings?
A couple of degrees and turn the air down a couple of degrees, yes. And we won't water the irrigation, that's not our own wells. So if the campus has irrigation that's outside, then we would not. We would do things like that.
And look at light usage, look at night times, make sure there's a rotation down where we know we've got people checking to make sure everything's off on breaks and I just think you gotta make a concerted effort to make sure that you're doing everything to conserve as much as possible.
And you just pray that we don't have a road department next year.
You're gonna pull up to a hot building covered in dead grass. Something nice.
Um,
Was Mineral Wells, when they were doing like a 4-day work week, one of their biggest savings happened to be water. And I was like, what did you do with that? And he's like, we did nothing with that. Apparently they put like some restraints on whatever the appropriate word is, where they couldn't do certain watering even at the district, and it wound up saving quite a bit of money just for water.
I think sometimes when you're trying to save money, you have to forego cosmetics. I mean, it's not great. I hate it. I don't want to pull up to a building with dead grass either.
Here's a nice town. It's just hard to not think that our stuff should look nice. We're a nice town, something to be proud of.
I would rather it look not great and keep our jobs and schools open and able to pay our bills up.
I mean, and you know, we also look at everything in the maintenance budget was cut, and so, you know, we'll have to be very particular in what gets fixed and what doesn't get fixed. You know, another expenditure would be not going to be popular, but like ryegrass on the football field for spring sports and for the fall sports to have green grass, and then, you know, ryegrass for the baseball, softball fields. If they want to put down that grass and do a fundraiser and do it out of their activity fund, I mean, that would be potentially would be a part of that, depending on what ryegrass it does.
What about, we have an extensive number of memberships and associations and things. And yeah, that has up quite a bit. A lot of travel, a lot of training, under that travel budget. I wrote down some notes here. Contracts as well. Are we doing RFQs on all of our contracts to see if they can come in cheaper? Is there other vendors? For instance, for the board, TASB, for our side, there's other vendors. Should we look at and see if there's opportunity to save costs on every single vendor in an RFQ and see if we can cut costs? We might cut costs by 10%. We might cut costs by 50%. We don't go try and ask. But a lot of these associations are nonprofits that we pay memberships for, and then we go pay for the luxury to go to the conference. It's kind of ironic, paying twice. So a lot of that stuff can be cut. The unnecessary spending starts at the top, in my opinion, and we expect the bills to follow along. We have to start at the very top. We have to do this stuff. We got to check our contract and our vendors and see if there's a better way. Just my thoughts.
So could we look at, on that, what is the top 10 vendors that we have? Or I'm not talking about electricity or water or anything like that, but other vendors that we can look for a new contract. We see like the top 10 that we're spending money with from the last time that we
I can
redid
do
that contract.
I can do a sort on our vendors. It exclude, you know, because the top 10 are gonna be our benefits. But I can.
When it comes to software, obviously I have no idea what is needed and not needed. There's a lot of software out there too. Like for instance, on Skyward, there's software, and then we go to a Skyward convention, and there's a lot of money spent on Skyward. I don't know how important Skyward is. I mean, that's just, I guess,
Our
How much-
for everything.
how much overlapping is our software? There's so many different softwares. And how many?
Howard does all of your student attendance, that's how you generate the revenue, it's all your account.
We have a lot of different softwares out there, and I think when you start, when I was just doing searches through the expenditures, and there's a lot of different stuff, and I don't know if they all are. I'm just saying, every single line of them needs to be looked at and said, do we really need this? Can we find a different way to do it? Same thing with consultants, and we spend a lot of money on consultants that we can do in-house. We can do salary studies in-house, we can do, you know, whatnot, a lot of stuff can be done in-house. All this stuff has to be cut first, in my opinion, and then, you know, if we get funded, then one day the state decides to get off their wallet, then we can change things, but right now, we just need to chop everything.
That was kind of the 10% cut, is cutting across the board, looking for savings, looking at everything that we have, saying how can we cut the things that we can cut.
With the numbers that we projected our budget on this year was 3950, and we had like 3820 or something like that, I remember last time, or what?
At the end of December, I don't know if I haven't checked on these businesses, we got back to see if we had any inputs.
I heard we had 8 new students day one coming back, so I mean, we're probably inching along 3830.
So how will you base your budget, what numbers will you base your budget on for next year?
For next year, I'll roll every grade up. So basically, roll every grade up and then determine what our new kindergarten would be. And use Zonda's demographic report, which they're gonna be here Monday night to present that report as well. You know, just to see if you have a large senior class going out and you maintain the same kindergartner, then your numbers are gonna go down just because more kids went out than came in. But I would just roll every one of them up and then compare it to what Zonda says that they say our growth.
It won't be 3950.
It won't
Yeah, I
be
can say our
very-
budget's gonna be less next year than it was this
I
year.
think
And
from
we're
the
gonna cut.
preliminary report that I've seen from Zonda, I think they say that they're projecting us to increase by about 58 students next year. Not much growth at all.
I guess it comes down to, out of the $2.7 million budget, how much are we gonna chop off this year, or next year's budget? And then, I think you have to have a plan that the next year you're gonna have to chop off so much, and at some point you gotta figure out how we're gonna give a raise. Or not, I think we're just gonna lose teachers like crazy. So as a board, how do we go about like saying, okay, let's do this? Is that something like, do we have to start letting people know when it comes to like the PLC, or not the PLC, but the 10 staff members at the high school that are gonna lose a position because of this $650,000?
Well, as we meet with staff, as they're meeting with principals, they start looking at, if we run it at this ratio, here's what you're looking at, here's what we're looking at here. Obviously, you hear this and you hear 30 to 1, or you hear whatever ratio. Understand at high school, there's a lot of singleton or classes that are, this is AP physics, or this is this, there's 7 kids in that class. You're always gonna have those kind of things that happen in the schedule. When you're talking about English classes or more basic math classes that are bigger, that's where you might want to fit more students in. So obviously, it's going to be us working directly with each principal on being as efficient as they can be on that campus, and obviously keeping the board apprised along the way with what we're doing with that. I think these are just more things that we feel like we can cut, or the change. It may not be exact, it may not be 10 to maybe 9, or maybe 11. When we get in there and start looking at it, we'll look at what, through attrition, when we see how many people are leaving, we're gonna have to sit down and look at what can we not fill? How can we just eat this position and do with what we have?
What effect does eliminating Avid can have? Or is there a backup for that? I'm not real familiar with Avid, but.
So Avid is a program, Kim Nauman is at the middle school.
Stephanie Hogan.
Stephanie Hogan's at the high school. So a lot of that focus is on college. So getting ready for college and college visits, working with study skills, just overall good life skills in general. We did find, we have been looking at programs. I do feel I have one that does, it will focus on the college. It's just not all college, it's college and career. And so, and I can give you a handout before you leave, all of you. And so I think we're going to be able to supplement that. And the good part about that is it won't cost anything. Now, we still have the dilemma of paying for it this year. It's expensive. And that's what happened. They had grants in the past, the grants weren't off. You call and you see if you're eligible to get that again or see what it is. And in this particular case, they said no. And so I have found another program that I feel we can make that work that will not cost. I mean, you'll still have your teacher, teaching it, but the cost of the actual program, which is like $38,000, something like that. 56 total. So that's, yeah. And so, so that doesn't include the teacher, but at least that's 56,000 in savings there. And I think it'll be good. And teachers have already met with so I think it'll be good overall.
No, I think you asked a good question about what's our goal here. I think it's gonna be really difficult to completely eliminate a $2.7 million deficit. So to me, cutting it in half would be a step in the right direction. So if we can get 1.3, that would be a goal.
If we do all the things that Chad has laid out here, it's actually 2/3. Is there any part of that you think we shouldn't do?
If we're talking about morale or atmosphere, I think anything that touches bank accounts of our teachers, I would not do.
So are you talking about specifically the longevity check?
Longevity checks would be the only one that I don't have a star next to.
I agree.
And look, as much as I love, that's my favorite day of the year is to go hand out those longevity checks. The only thing is I have not seen other districts do that. In fact, I've heard plenty of comments. I mean, again, I don't want to dip in anybody's pocket. I don't want anybody dipping into mine, but if we're not going to balance this budget and we're going to still take on almost, even with all these cuts, $1 million, I think that's something we just need to talk about. I mean, as much as I hate even having to do that, but it is $215,000 and it's something that the district don't do that we do. I mean, does anybody know of other districts that do?
There are a few that they don't necessarily all call them longevity checks, but I have heard of some. I couldn't give you a percentage or specific names.
I mean, just something to think about. Again, I hate to cut it, but just feel like everything's got to be on the table.
I think it's a small gesture you can do for teachers. If you're gonna take away their PLC, take away the time and increase the classroom sizes, all of these things that are putting teachers out more, it's a small, even if you take the 215,000 off here, still about half.
Yeah, well, and I do believe once we get through the staffing meetings and we know more what that looks like, because obviously that's 85% of our budgets. Once we know that and how efficient we can be with staffing, then we're gonna know more how much these others may need to happen or not.
Just reiterate, and I know I'm beating a dead horse, the 4-day week accomplishes all these goals, plus an unknown amount of overhead items that we haven't quantified. There's overhead items that are real, amount of tires, amount of fuel, amount of HVAC, amount of electricity that needs to be quantified. And that'll be on top of this. You can achieve these goals plus some. So this is something to consider.
See, what have you heard? This has been brought up. Will you come up to the podium, please? I'm sorry. What have you heard? What's the chatter on the street that teachers have been talking about?
And not give a raise. No PLCs or a raise.
I'll speak to the PLCs first. As far as, so in high school, we just have 2 departments that have PLCs. So we've already kind of gradually cut those, and those are obviously in math, English, for the departments that have the PLCs right now. And actually, in our math department, because we have, I think, 3 of those teachers are coaches, 3 of those 3 coaches actually don't have the PLC period. They just have a conference period, so they can have the athletic period. And so, and they have actually picked up. Those 3 coaches are in the math department. They have picked up. They just have 1 athletic period. They picked up another section to teach math to bring our math numbers down. So we've done some. That's kind of how we've done it the last 2 years. The only departments that had PLCs have had it. Last year, math didn't have it, and English didn't have it, and then we went back to it this year, especially with English, to give them the time that they needed to be able to grade all the things that they did. And then in math, we focused in just our 4. We've had 4 teachers that have the PLCs, and those are ones that are doing Algebra 1 as a testing subject, and then also the other 2 math teachers that have PLC are ones that are teaching higher level math. It's calculus, pre-cal. Ms. Bartow has it because she's doing on-ramps, and she does 3 advanced pre-cal classes, so she has a PLC as well to be able to meet with some of those other teachers. So as far as the PLCs, that's where we're at with English and math, because we kind of saw what that looked like without having it last year. So,
Do you think that taking those away will have an effect on like students' achievement?
I think it's been, I looked at our numbers last year. Our English teachers worked extremely hard, and our math teachers as well. And we actually, even without the PLCs last year, we grew. Our star scores went up a little bit. But I have seen kind of what giving that back to the teachers this year, what that's done with their morale and what that's done with their time commitments, and hoping to see that in better achievement because they're able to have time now to break down the data that they need to do. And that's kind of why we gave that back to them. And also to try to keep those, when we talk to those teachers, math and English, about, okay, if we cut PLCs, this is going to be larger classes. Or, if we give you PLCs, you're going to have larger class sizes. Let me say that. And they were willing to take on the larger class sizes to be able to have that time to be able to meet with each other and to get some of the things that they need to do, especially in English problem grading and things like that.
And if we do this, we're adding roughly, for an English teacher, 35 more kids per day that they're going to need to grade.
Technically, yes, sir.
With no PLC time to do that.
What if we do a 2 o'clock dismissal on Fridays to account for the missing PLC? I believe Paradise is doing that.
We'd have to have another 4 days, which, like Dr. Jones said, we did 5 kids.
Well, I think the difference is though, even if you do it on Friday, that's 1 PLC a week, which is normal in a lot of places, but when you're used to having a PLC every single day, that's kind of what we're talking about here. I mean, this is not typical to have a PLC every day, but something that I feel like Decatur has done to go above and beyond to help our teachers have that extra time to plan and to do the things they need to do.
Last year, when the English teachers didn't have the PLCs, one of the things we did for them is once in 6 weeks, we would get them a substitute, in to go in there into their classes, and we would stagger it to where could use, we would need 2 or 3 subs and give them half days, where they get a half day of planning, a half day of grading, or whatever it is that they needed. So we did that once a month.
Other thing to remember too is if we did do something like, say, we had dismissal at like 2 o'clock or what have you, we just have to be very cognizant of the fact that it's 18 minutes. And that would be, that's something big time from getting money.
And you spend money on the substitutes by what you had to do last time. There goes, that probably would come out of that 10% cut, I'm guessing.
I think we might have, I think we have to be careful, with our terminology we're using, because PLC, professional learning community, that is a fabulous thing for our staff to have. And that is time they look at that data, like Mr. Lackey was talking about, they get to see where the kids are needing more instruction. But it's not to grade papers. That's a planning time. So yes, they do need more time to grade papers, especially the English teachers. I get that, but I just think we have to make sure that we're not saying they need that extra time because they have 35 more kids. They do, but that's not PLC time. That's planning time they need more of.
No, I
Grading
understand
and that
that.
sort of stuff.
I just want to point out there's often conversation up here concerned about our scores. And this will harm our scores when you can't give the attention you need at the level that we already are. You're not going to increase our scores. Maybe plateau, but your consequences are probably going to go down. That has to be something that's going to be realized with this. And again, there are other options.
And again, we can get very creative with how we can get those PLC minutes in with the scheduling. So we need to look at all options, I think.
Yeah, so Chad, your proposal here of eliminating PLCs, I mean, that's not an all or nothing. We can play around with that, right?
Obviously, what I was looking at was coming up with a number to give to the board that said we want to see what cuts we can make. It's not ideal. You know, when you have to cut, it's not ideal. It's not the best case scenario. I think everything that's been talked about needs to be looked at. I do agree that after the 60 days and we get the 4 day stuff, we look at it. Because I do think you talk about sub costs, that's another benefit because you don't have as many absences by staff from that. So there's a lot of things I think we look at. Obviously, though, when we sit down and talk to Lyle and Brandy at the secondaries that have, you know, multiple schedules going on, a lot more happening in their master schedule, I think we sit and work directly with them. And I think that's one positive we have here is we all have great relationships where we can sit down. And, you know, we're not here to hurt anybody. We're not here to try to make it to where, you know, we want it to be as good as it can possibly be for staff. But like Melanie said earlier, it's about students and student success. But I've never been anywhere if staff's not succeeding, students aren't going to succeed. If staff's not happy, students aren't going to succeed. So it's going to take working together to be as efficient as we can possibly be. And that's kind of what we're bound to do. This is just more a number that Cindy's able to put on it by looking at, if you did this would eliminate this many positions.
So what I'm saying is your proposal here is eliminated altogether. But if we were to say once a month, or there's still a compromise to be had.
No. Let me back up. When I say PLCs, I'm talking about the PLC period that's built into every day. PLCs, most districts and most campuses that do professional learning communities don't necessarily have a period where they do those. They just have to work it, like Sandy was talking about earlier, they work it within their schedule. They do it once a week. They do it a couple of times a week during conference or at the end of the day or early in the mornings. I still think PLC is a powerful tool. I just don't know if we can do it where it's in the schedule every single day.
What can we cut out of Fund 36? That's never talked about, ever. It's a sacred cow. UIL. Sports. Cut, what can we cut in 36, in UIL? Fine, thanks.
Well, appreciate it.
You know, there's a lot there, there's a lot of money spent, obviously, everybody loves to win, and that's fun. But there's a lot of money, in that department, and traveling to everything, uniforms cost, is a lot of cost there. And has anybody looked into there to see if there's room to cut that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the bottom line, you look across the board at everything, the 10%, when you're talking about supplies, you're talking about uniforms and those type of deal, but I think a big piece of that is travel and not knowing districts and not knowing those things yet make it hard to plan. If we're to, you know, say for example, Wichita Falls, you know, obviously they're going to two big schools, so they won't be in our district, so we know we won't be going there, so where will we be going? I think that's gonna be a powerful thing to answer. Then the next thing you go to is, what sports do you look at cutting if you cut sports? You know, I mean, so then that's something that I think, that to me goes right along with the discussion about closing STEM. I think when you start closing campuses, closing, you know, not saying it won't happen or couldn't happen, because when you get to a point where we're going to be bankrupt as a district, or we're going to be, if you get to that point, then you look at those things. Right now, we're not at that point. Right now, we're at the point of how can we cut this 2.7 in half in a year, then cut the other half the next year. But obviously, there's always an option for the board to come in and say, we have too many sports, therefore too many coaches, we have to cut this.
So my question with not cutting the STEM, dissolving the STEM to each campus, who does that affect? Who is negatively affected by dissolving the STEM? Staff.
Staff, students, parents.
How is a student affected or a parent affected if they're still getting the learning environment?
Well, when the student's affected, the parents affected.
I'm asking how is
I would like to
the
look at it and
student
say
affected?
about, if we could get one of them on the mic up here, that'd be great. This is a workshop, right?
Natasha. Come on.
I'm speaking to the mic.
Okay, you keep talking about STEM like the STEM isn't a program, it's not like one time a day our kids go to an elective and they experience STEM. It's all day long, like literally from the start of their day, all the way through. It's not something that you can just take and put it. It's not the, the language program that ran where you have a few kids per grade or something like that. It's not a program. I realize that it looks like it on a spreadsheet, but it's not. It's school. And you're talking about teachers and staff and kids and whole families. And you're talking about it like it's temporary, but it's not. You're like, well, it's a short-term solution. Closing school isn't a short-term solution. I mean, yeah, you could probably cut something out of 7 different programs, and then in a few years, we're in a better place where we get funding from the state, which is a very real possibility. Then yeah, you could have built those things back in. Cutting funding here and there, that's a temporary solution. But closing an entire school, that's not temporary, that is permanent. Are you gonna then open the school, open the school back up in 2 years? If we get funding?
I mean, if we pass a bond and build new facilities, 100%. I mean, I didn't want to spend $3 million on it to just
But then you're
wipe it
also,
off and dose it down.
but then you're talking about displacing all of these beautiful kids. You're talking about moving all of these kids for 2 years and then trying to pass a bond, which we obviously don't have a great track record with. Not that I don't think that it's absolutely necessary, but these are really big decisions for a temporary fix. So you're putting a Band-Aid on something. You're talking about closing the entire campus. And keep in mind too, like the money that went into the STEM school, I'm president of PTO, and I can tell you, our parents have funded all kinds of things. We have a makerspace in basically every single hallway that is funded by parents. PTO raises funds. I personally went to garage sales and we got separate First Baptist to build all of these spaces. We went and toured another school in Waxahachie so that come up with the idea, and we were like, okay, what can we do where we're not? How can we fund this? And we did that. What, are there other areas that you could be fundraising for things? If the school needs something, I'm not like, well, we don't have money for it, or, you know, if we have an idea and we want to make it happen, we've raised the money in all different directions. And you're talking about a lot of these things like they are temporary, and it's a small thing, but it's not.
No, I mean, I understand all that, but I mean, a student would still get the same teaching and learning as the other three campuses are getting. And also, how does it work? How does it work from a student that started? And I'm not against the STEM. I think it's a great learning environment whatsoever. But I'm saying like a kid starts in kindergarten in the STEM, at 5th grade, they go to the STEM. How does that STEM learning environment, which is amazing and it's very successful, how does that roll over into an overcrowded middle school?
I think that's a question that a lot of our parents have. So
We did, when we started and we opened STEM, one of the things that we opened with was knowing we went to 3rd grade for a reason, so that we could get middle school ready. So they already have the electives, they're doing Project Lead the Way. Project Lead the Way is very complementary to the engineering programs that are happening at STEM, so that that can carry through, so that when they do leave elementary school and they go to middle school, that's continuing, and that continues in the high school with some of the pathways that we have with, you know, engineering and things of that nature. One thing I want to go back to though is with STEM that I do want to make sure I'm very clear about. That when she talks about STEM being at the start to the end, it's because engineering is built into every aspect of the curriculum. It's built into the reading, it's built into the writing, it's built into the math. It's not a separate, we do an elective and we cover that. It's not a, let me do 45 minutes of just engineering. And is engineering a piece of that where they have that as a rotation? Absolutely. But they also chose to do without music in order to do that, so that they wanted extra of anything when it came to that. So it's not that simple to then move some of these kids, bring them back into, say, Rand, where you got bilingual, where I don't know where we would put in the extra kids to begin with some of the space in there. And then say, oh, well, they're gonna do, these 2 classrooms are gonna do STEM. Because it is a completely different structure. So you would literally have to manage how we are with bilingual and how that schedule and rotation is with that piece of it. And so there's a lot of layers is what I'm saying. But I want to clarify that when she says all day, it is all day. And it is integrated throughout, because that's how the STEM program is. That's why they have to be certified. Like, you have teachers that didn't just get their teaching certificate. They had to get certified, because they have to be able to integrate that into a reading curriculum, into a writing curriculum, into a math curriculum, and do it seamlessly where it makes sense.
I understand all that. I'm just putting out every option and trying to be as most transparent and hearing all sides of it. Because
I do get a little emotional about it, because it's something that I think that has been a value added to the district. I also get we're in these tough times, and we have to figure out what makes the most sense and what is going to work. So I get all of that. I just think that when we're looking at these things and we're looking at shutting down, that is a worst case, scenario to me, as opposed to cut the travel, cut whatever else that isn't going to impact kids, keep the positions that we need to move scores forward, because it's been very clear that scores need to move forward, and I 1000% agree. But if we're going to hit teachers in planning to do some of this instruction, and we're going to hit teachers where they're not going to get what they need, and then we're going to put on them, your star scores need to go up, you need this, and it's a 1-day freaking assessment. We have to weigh all of that, is on. Shut up.
So Dylan, recap with me, because I disagree with the savings. I don't see it, because some of that savings that were proposed is actually on this paper here. So recap with me the savings that you're seeing that we'll get by putting 6th grade over there. But I don't quite, not following your.
the same as you would by eliminating PLC periods, you would be eliminating staff. So we're essentially doing the same thing to the high school by eliminating staff as you would at the STEM.
Well, you're taking 400 kids and you're putting them into 3 other buildings. You have to teach those kids.
Yeah, those
same
teachers go with them.
Right, so you're not eliminating staff. Where's the staff to eliminate?
We went over that in the.
Yes, I know, that's why I disagree with that. I want you to just show me that logic.
I have it right here, but I can't give it to you right now.
No,
Cindy
just,
gave it
just,
to
just
us.
recap it with me, because part of it was the PLCs, that's here. Part of it was admin, that's here. We have those two things on here, that was proposed to us. Where this is incorporating a lot of that savings, so that savings there isn't gonna be that big, because it's already on.
It's basically any singleton position, and I think everybody knows where I stand. I don't think it's time, I don't think we're at the, like Michelle just said, I don't think we're at the point of the desperation it would take to do something this drastic right now. But anytime you're able to take 4 campuses of students and put them into 3 campuses, every singleton position that you have on that campus is already had on those other 3. You have a principal at the other 3. You wouldn't have to have a principal for STEM. The principal of STEM wouldn't go be co-principal. So you go through every singleton position that you have and you add up those salaries, which Cindy had broken down in the last budget workshop where we did it all to show exactly what the savings would be. And it was, I think, 800-some-thousand or something. But that's-
Again, that
that's where it came.
800,000 had PLCs, which we were showing.
There's no PLCs at STEM.
Has nothing to do with PLC. This has, it's all in STEM, has nothing to do with 1 through 6. So
Okay, well,
when-
in there, if you recap that, it has admin costs, admin, because that's in that.
I know, but when Cindy gave us the presentation, this little blue folder had a breakdown of all of these things, plus dissolving of the STEM, and this dissolving STEM had nothing to do with these 1 through 6. So I'm talking about, it's not even on here, so it's like, it doesn't include any of these.
I think when you
It's a
recap,
1
when you
million.
recap what Cindy gave us last time, you were to see in there, it's gonna have the savings from the PLC from the middle school. It's gonna have in there the savings from the admin. That was included in there, because I noted that when we were talking about the 40 week, that we get to recoup that. It's in that packet.
Cindy, you want to clarify this?
Well, it's in the packet, all of it was in the packet, but in there's one specific page that was just for the STEM. And that was if you all the singleton positions, every position that's just one, if you're able to, through attrition, move those people to places where there's openings that equal that amount. It had nothing to do with PLCs on that page because there aren't PLCs at STEM. And it was just about the specific positions that you could move around the district. And
I'll
not have,
recap that folder. I have it at home. I'll recap it, and I'm pretty sure I'm accurate with what I read, and I'll check it again. Because if not, y'all can tell me right now, explain to me where you're $800,000, because you're still gonna need staff to operate that building. You still have overhead items, you still need nurses, you still need, all the staff I'll look at right now. And there's more to it than saying you're gonna save $800,000 when you're moving kiddos in there. There's still, that building's still operating. You still have staff to operate that.
And I'm not saying that's a solution, I'm just saying it's something we were presented.
Thank you, Tasha. Sorry, I didn't get that. I appreciate it.
I think it's on the same level as the 4 days work week. Get the school, these are all options, they're all on the table. Everybody, we're gonna make some hard decisions, and we will.
Did I miss reductions at Central Avenue? Or did we go over it?
We were just hitting on them, so if you want to talk about it, go for it.
Can you clarify what the reductions at Central Avenue are?
does everybody, okay, so we had the meeting before, and in the blue folder, there's one whole page that talked about the specific, and that's when we went into closed session, because we were talking about specific personnel, some probationary, some, we talked about Meredith Show not coming back and not filling that position. Just possible moves with some personnel based off, different things. So we can definitely get that to you again if you don't still have it to kind of look through. Okay, thank you.
So is this something that we would take like on Monday's agenda, take a vote, or is this even something to take a vote on? It's just
I think this has to be almost a, as we do these staffing meetings, then we follow back up with another meeting with the board with updated numbers to show you, okay, here's what we actually realistically sit down with Lyle and feel like we are able to cut and come back with, and just continually look at it. And obviously these things would be things Cindy plug into the budget that the board is eventually going to approve, but to me, it needs to be an ongoing working document that we're all in on through the whole process.
And personally, for me to vote on anything, I need to see the real, look at cutting the cost, what that really is. I need to see the RFQs. I need to see the data, the 60 days of survey data that we're doing. I need to see that there is a solution that solves this problem. And we need to vet that too. And I need that before I make any decision personally.
And I would love to see that solution on paper that if we think that works. I mean, I'm not against a 4-day work week, but nobody has yet to put something in front of my face that says saving money, a significant amount of money to reduce the budget, I should say.
I know that's what I'm asking for that work to be accomplished. That'd be great.
So can we get that going? All the things
So
that we do for
we're
that?
working on it. When the 60 days are up, we'll be coming back to the board with the information that we have to have those discussions. And luckily, Scott, you don't have to vote on anything till August. And so that by having these meetings periodically along the way, and we have staffing meetings and we're able to come back, all we can bring you is the most realistic data and options that we have. And when we bring that to you, then as a board, you'll eventually make the decision. You know, here we are. I mean, we're in January. We've got 8 months till the budget gets approved. We're having some real deep conversations about it and getting into it now. I think this has to continue as we move forward.
I think it's for the 4-day work week. I mean, there would be some parameters that, like for staffing, if you're going to reduce the number of hours that people work, or the number of days that people work with their, I think they said in turn that there would not be a reduction in their wage, things like that. Before I can move forward and tell you how much that's going to save, and that all plays into it.
Yeah, I understand. I know it's a lot of data, and the same thing for mileage. You're going to run less miles on the buses. And speaking of buses, is it better to outsource it? There's all kinds of things when you look at every single item needs to be looked at and vetted. With that idea of a 4-day week, how does that run? You should be able to plug and play, plug in your numbers that you currently spend with a 5-day week on overhead items, and see what it looks like with the 4-day. You are going to have the cost cuttings in a lot of items that is from overhead items.
Well, but you're also going to have increases in the prices. So that are going to offset, because if you aren't going to cut the bus drivers' wages, then their hourly rate and their overtime rate is going to go up, which in turn means that I'm going to have to turn around and charge school to athletics, field trips, all those who use the buses more whenever they go on those trips, because I'm going to be paying the bus drivers extra. Does that make sense?
Well, yeah, it does. But I think we still need to go on paper and see the amount of 50,
I just need
51.
to know if you're going to keep everybody's total wage the same and just increase their hourly wage.
All the superintendents I've spoken to say they do not cut any salaries, even hourly employees, by going to a 4-day work week.
And that's 85% of our budget, correct? And then 85% or so.
So, and I
Okay.
do not quite any.
Yeah, you can't touch, you can't do that. So that piece of it's gonna just have to be increased hourly.
Well, 51 maintenance is obviously a large scope, there's a large chunk of change there, and there's going to be some overhead savings in that. And utilities, there's going to be some savings there. That's a large line item. It's $1 million spent in electricity a year. Well, how does that affect it when we're not running everything? This stuff is, we can vet this, and I know it's pain, but to me, it's totally worth doing, because you're not going to affect teaching and learning. You're not going to shut down schools. You're going to increase morale. You're going to, studies talk about.
Okay, I can stop you there, because you always say it's gonna increase morale, but at the same time, we've heard from our 4 secondary principals that puts an inordinate amount of stress on them. And Stephanie, Lana, jump in, obviously, if I'm misquoting you guys. But what I heard at that last meeting was that you guys were very much opposed to having a 4-day week because of the stress of getting everything done in that amount of time. Is that correct, or am I?
It's hard to imagine how to get everything done in 4 days that you used to have to have. So I guess I'm saying I would love to see the data. Other schools that have done it and if their scores didn't go up. I guess just my first impression is I can't imagine getting it all done in 4 when I used to have that. It's a lot. And
That's what I just want to make sure.
Yeah, I want to go to school to do it. I don't really accomplish it. It's worth betting and asking, how did you do it? You know, how did y'all do it? And why do you have a 95% success rate after the year? Why? That's pretty strong. It's worth looking at, and I think I would like to have that better. Sure. Definitely. Definitely. I know that I have a 40 work week. I'll look. But again, you have the same, there's no cutting limits. You have the same minimum, it's the same learning, it's just gonna change, it's just a little bit different. Like next week when we're off for a week, you guys adapt somehow. Last week when we were off for a day, figure it out. I noticed that we talked about who didn't want, but we also had two principals that said they would like it. And I think that was the middle school and high school. That's,
Little babies are not like babies. They're different. Elementary is different. They're set a week in elementary. Y'all invite them every day, 5 days a week, and just.
I'm hearing you.
I mean, it's just, elementary is a little different.
We have to think about what are those kids gonna be doing on Friday when they're home by themselves.
Last
That's a
week,
big concern.
they were off a week ago, when they're off in the summer. These guys, we'll adapt to this, guys.
Well, does anybody else have anything on the budget workshop?
Thank you everyone for your input, we appreciate it. It helps.
Item number 4, closed meeting pursuant to Texas Government Code 551-074. Consider and discuss acceptance of superintendent's retirement. We are going to close session at 6:02 p.m.
So when it gets below 7, it's okay.
There's only 3 people watching that.
They already know.
Good, so there's 2 couples there.
The time is 6:45 PM. We are now back in open session. Item 5, consider and take possible action to accept superintendent's retirement. Is there any discussion? Do we have a motion?
I recommend we accept the resignation of Dr. Chad Jones, Superintendent of Decatur ISD.
I have a motion by Jonathan. Do I have a second? Second by Jeremy. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say nay. Motion passes 7-0. Item 6, personnel, discuss superintendent qualifications and search. After speaking with Dr. Jones and getting a timeline, we are going to continue to look further down for qualifications for what we're going to do for a superintendent and postpone that discussion until next month, the February's meeting, and then come out with a timeline of a search and qualifications that we would like to see in the next superintendent. Is there any other discussion about that? Did I say it right? Okay. Item number 7 is adjournment. 6:46, we are adjourned. PM.